What is going on, everyone? This is Zach back here with another episode of Clutch Crew Sports. And here on today's episode, we're going to talk about the three NBA teams that were recently eliminated in the playoffs, as well as taking a look at the Eastern Conference and Western Conference finals. And at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about the NBA draft lottery. Now, let me introduce you to the rest of the crew.
What's going on, guys? This is Eric, your ranting co-host here, and there is going to be a rant tonight. I can already tell you. Shout out to my friend Joseph who listens to us. He's a fan of one of these teams, and he knows what this rant's going to be about. I'm sure he'll be looking forward to it in a way. So,
in a way,
well, in a way, because the person deserves the rant, but it's about his team that lost. So, obviously I know he would be much happier if his team had won and not had to have this rant, but we'll see. I hope you guys enjoy the episode though.
And what is going on, guys? It is Connor, the co-host with the most, and pretty proud of myself. I'm coming off a successful lock, probably one of my best locks of all time that I've made. So I was pretty excited about that. And yeah, I'm also excited that, I still actually have some teams left in the playoffs to root for, because honestly, I didn't think I'd have any left after this round. So, obviously the Hornets aren't in it, but a couple of my other teams that I like to root for are still in it. So I'm excited.
Yeah.
And
there's
no Lakers.
Yeah, and there's no
no Lakers.
That's and also no James Harden or Kyrie or KD winning the championship this year. So that's also good.
Yeah, this year has been this playoffs have been crazy. I feel like it's the like all the perceived chokers are actually winning now, and obviously there's one that
except for one later. Of them.
Yeah, there's one exception, but yeah, I mean the Bucks, Giannis, they've had that reputation. The Clippers have had that reputation, and then you have the Suns and the Hawks who weren't even in the playoffs last year. So that's pretty crazy. I'm glad that that's one of those things that I'm happy about this year, at least, is that between the Suns and Hawks, that's two teams that missed the playoffs that are now in the conference finals. That sort of thing in the NFL can happen every now and then, but rarely do you ever see that in the NBA. So shout out to those teams. We'll be talking about them later, but
especially since we went 4 straight years of Cavs and Warriors in the finals.
Oh, I know. Yeah. So obviously we're not in the finals yet, but we'll see. So first off, guys, we want to talk about the three teams that got eliminated over the weekend, and that would happen to be the Nets, the 76ers, and the Jazz. So we're going to start first with the Nets, and I'll let Connor kind of take the floor for the Nets. Tell us what the future is going to be like for the Nets. What do you think they need to do? Just kind of recap the Nets for us.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, probably out of all the teams in the playoffs, this probably has to be the team that's probably, I mean, they're all going to be disappointed, but the biggest disappointment has to be for the Nets. This was a true and serious case of championship or bust with this team, having Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving all on the same team, the next big three to come out in the NBA. These guys were looking like a guaranteed lock for the Eastern Conference Finals. Obviously, before the season started, all four of us really, because Nate included, had them in the finals. Zach was the only one that had them winning the finals, but we all still at least had them in the finals. So quite a big shock to see them going out here in the Eastern Conference Finals. Definitely, I would say that out of all the teams that were left at that point, the Bucks were the only team that I saw being able to do it. So congratulations to them. But honestly, I don't think a lot really changes for the Nets going forward. I mean, it's really for them just about staying healthy. They were at various points, different players were injured throughout the playoffs. Obviously, KD, we kind of in a way knocked on him and called him out for his style, his play in the past, and he really stepped up. He really carried this team. If you look at games 5 through 7, Kevin Durant was unstoppable carrying this team. So he really, there's no change going forward in my mind with this team. They should be championship contenders next season. They just have to get everybody healthy. again, all credit goes to the Bucks because, even though Kyrie and Harden were hurt at different points, I know I was talking about this last night when the three of us were talking, that 3 of those 4 games that the Bucks won, the Nets had at least 2 of their big 3 healthy at that time. Like in game 3, they had KD and Kyrie fully healthy. And then game 6 and 7, they had KD and Harden fully healthy. So Harden like maybe laboring a little bit, but yeah, I don't see much change for the Nets because there's not much they really can do during the offseason. I mean, this team is, way deep in the luxury tax. They're like almost 60 million over the cap. So there's not a whole lot of changes they can make to this team, but honestly, they don't really need to make a lot of changes. I'm sure you guys would agree with me that these guys, they're going to be Eastern Conference Finals contenders and NBA Finals contenders again next season.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Just the amount of superstars they have on their team automatically puts them in that conversation. I'll say for them, between Harden and Kyrie, I think Kyrie is more important for them. And that's why I think when he got injured, it was a much bigger deal than Harden getting injured, because in game 2 they had no James Harden and blew the Bucks off the court when winning the game by like 40 something points. So Eric, do you agree with me on that, or do you think Harden's more important than Kyrie?
No, Kyrie is definitely more important.
I think I know Eric's answer to this question.
Yeah, no, Kyrie is definitely more important. I mean, like we were talking about earlier, how some of these teams that have been kind of deemed like playoff chokers or not good teams in the past are like stepping up now. James Harden is just another one that continues to disappoint, though. I mean,
yeah,
I know he was injured and everything, especially his first game back. So I was willing to cut him some slack for that, but he didn't perform well in any of the games, and especially in game 7, he disappeared in that game too. I didn't get to watch the game. I was at work, but just looking at the stat line, I mean, I know he was like 4 of 14 or something like that. I mean, and that's just awful, man. And especially in a game 7, whereas like Kyrie, like he's had big moments, like winning the championship with LeBron in Cleveland. Like he made a lot more clutch shots in the game 7. I know LeBron gets all the credit and everything for that, but Kyrie was really the biggest, difference maker in that game 7. And same thing like Zach talked about. I mean, I think just Kyrie and KD have a better chemistry together too than James Harden does. So that's another reason why I think he's more important. But if there's one move that I think the Nets need to make, I mean, maybe I'm just overreacting, but another person besides James Harden that just was really just god awful this whole series, who I thought was going to be an important piece for them, especially when the injury started happening, was Joe Harris. I mean, I think they said that, I saw this kind of like random stat where like on his last like 22 3-pointers from the series, that like Ben Simmons has a higher 3-point percentage than him. Like because like Ben Simmons has shot 22 threes technically, including like half court buzzer beaters and stuff, and he's made the same amount of threes as Joe Harris did in that series. I mean, that's pretty bad. I mean, I don't know like if they should consider moving on from him, or like, I don't know, but that he was bad too. I mean, like KD straight carried. I mean, we called him out, and we said that he needed to be a difference maker, and especially in game 5. I mean, he played every minute of that game, and
he played every minute of like game 6 and 7 too. I think he pretty much played every minute of like those last few games.
Yeah, he was like unguardable at times. I mean, and this is why I think he is the best player in the NBA, but I still want to see him win without superstars, and obviously, like, they weren't fully able to get it done there. But so I don't know. Joe Harris question marks, James Harden question marks. But
I think just very quickly before we move on to the next team, your thing about Joe Harris, I think probably what's going to help him, honestly, like, I don't think he does well in a starting role, which is what he was forced into. I think he's better if he can get into that coming off the bench role that he had, because when Harden, KD, and Kyrie are all healthy, Harris is like the 6th man, but with Kyrie going down, it's like, okay, Harden kind of had to move over and play point. So then Harris would play, the 2 guard as like the starter. So I think he's a lot better coming off the bench. So if they can all get healthy, I think he'll come back to where he was. I think just getting thrust into that starting role was probably not good for him.
That's a part of it. I just think too, he just needs to play better. I mean, it's honestly, so it's such a simple thing to say, but if he makes those shots, they win one of those games, that they lose close or the overtime doesn't happen, so many things you can point at. He just needs to shoot better because he was still having open shots. They just weren't falling. Like when you have KD and Harden, even a 50% Harden, you're going to get open looks. And when Kyrie comes back, that'll make it even better for him. So honestly, he's just got to make the shots, and that's really all it is, I think. Let's move over now and talk about another team that had a disappointing playoffs, and that would be the Utah Jazz. So the Jazz, I think, are in a situation they're in a totally unique situation here compared to these other teams, I think. Because with the Nets, a lot of what we're saying is, oh, this team's still good. This team's still going to, they're going to be fine. I don't know if we're saying that about the Jazz, guys, because the Jazz, it's fine in the regular season to do what they do, but this is 2 straight years now in the playoffs. They've kind of choked. I mean, they had the big lead against Denver in the bubble, and then Denver came back and beat them in that series, and then they were up 2-0 on the Clippers, and then Kawhi got injured, and they still lost 2 games to end this to lose 4 in a row. So this is worrisome to me if I'm the Jazz. But the thing is what are they going to do? Because they have Gobert and Mitchell, obviously, that Gobert has like a max contract or something, and then Gobert or Mitchell probably is going to get a max contract if he doesn't already have one. So those are fine. But after that, it's just, what are you going to do? What kind of person are you going to bring in to the team to change things? And I'll give my opinion on who that might be, and then see if Eric thinks it's cool or not. But I think what they should do is I think they should trade Mike Conley to the OKC Thunder for Kemba Walker, and obviously they'll probably get a pick or a young player or something in that trade to go along with Mike Conley. But I think bringing in someone like Kemba Walker to replace Mike Conley, because Conley, let's face it, he's getting older. He's not the offensive player that he once was, and that's the thing with the Jazz is their offensive stars are basically Mike Conley and Jordan Clarkson, because Gobert is not an offensive star. They have good defensive players. Joe Ingles can hit threes sometimes, Royce O'Neal, but I think someone like Kemba Walker, and Kemba's inconsistent, but at least those times where he does show up, he does, put on like 30-point games and stuff. So Eric, what do you think about that from a Thunder's perspective, and if you think that makes sense for the Jazz?
Yeah, I think that could make sense for the Jazz. And as a Thunder fan, as long as if we're getting like, first round pick or like a young guy to develop,
you don't need another first round pick. What are you talking about?
Well, but I'm not just going to trade Kemba Walker.
I know that was a joke.
Okay, I was like, I was like, I gotta get compensated. I've already got $1 million, but what's $1 million in one? Well, and honestly, like what I think the Thunder are trying to do, like after that, just to get on them for a second, after making that Kemba Walker trade, like I think they're trying to get as many picks as possible to try to like move up higher in the draft or something if the draft lottery doesn't go their way, or like maybe there's somebody they see like in the next year's draft or something they might want to try to get, so they're stashing up picks to move up to like the top 5 or something for that. But I don't know, but yeah, I do think that trade would make sense. But the main person that I think the Jazz need to move on from is Rudy Gobert. Like Rudy Gobert has to be the most overrated player in the NBA, or at least one of the most
aside from
players.
Someone else who might get talked about later. A few
Yeah,
minutes from now.
who I'm going to talk about later might be the most overrated player. But Rudy Gobert, but honestly, I might even say Rudy Gobert is more overrated just because, he wins these DPOY awards all the time, and everybody's like, oh, he's a lockdown machine, and like, and yeah, like he's good at guarding bigs, like posting up in the paint, like. He's good at that, but when he's got somebody driving at him, like he got torched a lot during that. I'm like, if you're the defensive player of the year, like more often than not, you should be stopping that as opposed to them torching you almost every time. And then other than getting putbacks off of like offensive rebounds, he's completely useless on offense. And that's the biggest problem for the Jazz. Like they really rely heavily on the 3-point shooting.
Yeah.
But when the 3-point shots aren't falling, they need somebody else inside who can get you some buckets inside when the shots aren't falling, and it's not Rudy Gobert. Like, I think they could still trade him because even though he has a max contract,
That's the problem, dude. I'm looking it up right now. It's
he,
big.
yeah, but see, he has those DPOY awards, and so I think they could trick a team that's like, I don't want to say this to jinx Zach, but like somebody like Portland somebody like Portland that is like trying to get better on defense might fall for it. Be like, well, he's the defensive player of the year. Like, he instantly boosts our defense and could make a difference for us. Like, I could see some team that is like hot on offense but struggles on defense making a trade for him. But if that's who I'm moving on from, if I'm the Jazz, I'm not a Rudy Gobert fan at all. And I know some people say like, well, he gets like 20 rebounds a game. But like, I talked about stats all the time. Like, rebounds are so pointless. Like, most of those rebounds are just uncontested defensive rebounds. He'll get you some offensive boards every now and then that are valuable, but out of those like 20 rebounds he's getting in a game, like 3 or 4 of them are valuable and the rest are not. So those are inflated numbers to me that don't really mean anything. So, but I do agree with Zach too, though, that they do need to try to move on from Mike Conley if possible, but trading him might be difficult. But I do think they could trade Gobert. But Connor, what do you think on this?
Moving on from Conley will be easy. Just don't re-sign him. He's going to be a free agent next year. So.
Oh, I thought he still had one more year.
No,
on
his deal is done. So,
oh, okay. Well, that trade's not going to happen then.
I was like, yeah, that'll be easy. They can just, because they're not going to re-sign him to like something small just to trade him. So
no.
Yeah, it's
okay. I didn't.
Yeah,
that.
I definitely agree with Eric. They need to get a more, someone who can score inside. Because you're right. It's live by the 3, die by the 3, and most of the time you're going to die by the 3, especially in the playoffs. Because teams, I think Zach has talked about this before. Like, teams are a lot more, vigilant and awake, I guess is the term I could use to that in the playoffs. So like, they don't let you get those easy open looks as often as you do in the regular season. Because there's a lot of regular season matchups where they're just kind of like, whatever, like, take it. I don't really,
And also teams will go down the depth chart more. When it comes to down the playoffs, a lot of teams just go with 7, maybe 8 players.
Right. And so, but it's like, during the regular season, it's kind of just like, who cares? I don't want to try and like, overexert myself trying to like contest this. Like, I don't want to get hurt or whatever. But during the playoffs, like, it's all or nothing. So they're going to be a lot more alert. It's not going to be like the All-Star game out there where everybody gets open threes, So, I definitely agree. Trading Gobert has to be a priority for them. Like you said, I don't know if there'll be any takers. Because I don't know. I'm trying to think of who it would be. Other than Portland, because I know.
Here, this is ridiculous, guys. Let me read you the cap hits for the next few years. So, next year it's 35 million, then it's 38 million, then it's 41 million, then it's 43 million, and in 2025 it's 46 million.
Yeah.
Because he won those Defensive Player of the Year awards, he was eligible for, I think it was the Supermax. And they gave it to him.
And it's one of those things too. It's like you have to take advantage of his value now because, definitely later down the line, people are going to either start to realize that he's overrated or he's going to regress. And then you're just going to be stuck with this player that is making a ton of money. Kind of like how the Hornets are probably going to be stuck with Gordon Hayward. But, you're going to be stuck with this player that's on a Supermax contract that's going to be doing like next to nothing for your team. So they have to do it now. If they don't do it now, then I don't think they'll ever be able to do it. So it's a priority for sure.
Yeah. Let's now go to the third team, and that's the Philadelphia 76ers. So, Eric, just do your thing, man.
Get the popcorn ready.
Yeah. Joseph, this one's for you, man, because I know you feel the same way. My buddy Joseph's a 76ers fan that I work with, so I'm sure he feels the same way as me. But, yeah, so basically what the 76ers need to do is they need to get rid of Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons is just one of the overall strangest players to watch. This guy is like 6'10". He can play like a point guard type of player. Can facilitate the ball well. This guy, like, on paper with his like size and build and everything, if he lived up to his potential, which I know won't happen since he can't shoot, but if he were to live up to what could have been his max potential, he could have been like a Magic Johnson type of level player. I mean, that tall point guard that can facilitate, can get you buckets, can play defense, like all that stuff. But the problem is this guy just can't shoot the ball. I mean, it's just, I've never seen somebody that is like a primary ball handler that can also be a distributor that can't shoot like this. I mean, the fact that like that one game where he made the one like game where he made like an actual like real 3-pointer, and his teammates and stuff were all going crazy and the crowd's going crazy and all this stuff. It's like, bro, like dozens of 3-point shots get made a game, but because he finally made one, then it's all of a sudden so special. Like, he should be doing this on a regular basis. And then don't even get me started on his free throws, dude. I mean, like, Zach, I think, posted in like one of our chats that we had with Jackson about, or did Jackson post it? I don't remember, but
No, it was me.
it was you. Okay, yeah. This post about him shooting 34% from the free throw line and that being like the lowest ever in the playoffs or something like that. I mean, that's just unbelievable, man. So like, I called him out in the last episode, just like we called KD out. And KD, man, he stepped up. He scored like almost 50 points in game 5 and like almost 40 points in game 7, like making a high percentage of his shots, like doing everything.
Another almost 50 in game 7. Like,
yeah, like what is this guy Ben Simmons do in game 7 against the Hawks? Oh, I'm going to bring the ball to the court. Oh, here, you take the ball. Okay, I'm going to drive to the basket, but then here, you take the ball. Okay, I'm literally under the rim by myself. There's no one within 3 feet of me, but here, you take the ball. Like, the fact that he had no confidence to even go up for a dunk that was not even really going to be contested. What? I've never seen this in my life. I haven't always been a hardcore basketball fan, but I have watched basketball or like hooped with my friends or whatever, like since I was a kid. I've never seen this in my entire life. It's just amazing to me. And even on defense, like in game 7, like normally he's like known for being a good defender, which is what makes him, a little more valuable. But literally he would be on Trae Young and then someone comes and sets like a mediocre screen and then he just switches and gets off of Trae Young. Bro, the whole point is like, you're supposed to be this elite defender. You're like almost 10 inches taller than Trae Young. Like, this shouldn't be that, like, yes, Trae Young is a great offensive player, but this shouldn't be that big of a problem. You should be able to contain him better than, some of these other guys. Like, it's like, what are you doing, dude? And like, this is what I ranted on LeBron about a while back when I talked about him quitting on the Lakers in the series against the Suns. Like, it looked to me like Ben Simmons quit. I don't know if y'all think that. I don't know if y'all thought that when watching the game, but in my opinion, watching it, it looked like he quit on the team. It looked like he couldn't be bothered to be there.
Yeah, it definitely looked like, especially
and I'll say this too.
Yeah.
I think he's for sure getting traded. I think there's no way they don't trade him. Like, after what happened, like, you have to.
Yeah,
I would definitely say that they have to. I don't know if they will, but like, yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. Like, especially that one.
Yeah.
Well, I was saying, especially like Eric said, that one play where he was literally underneath the basket, no one within 3 feet of him. Like, yeah, if you're worried that you're going to get fouled and go to the free throw line, then like at least in that scenario, at least you'll still get the 2 points for the dunk because like no one's around you. If someone fouls you, it's going to be an and one.
Yeah.
Like, it was just absurd. Like, I remember seeing that, and like he just kind of kicked it out to like Thibault or someone, and they missed the shot. And I was
who's not known as being an offensive scorer,
right? And then like the announcers were like, "What? Like, why did he just pass that?" Like,
yeah, and that was from the whole game. They're like, well, there was like one play early in the game, and he kind of did a move and then passed it. Like, well, they were like, "Wow, look, Ben Simmons was aggressive there." I'm like, No, he wasn't, because he rolled around and could have probably got a layup, but he passed it out instead. Like,
But my thing is, like, if they don't trade him, because I mean, who's gonna want to stay with Ben Simmons? Like, I think the thing is that the Sixers as a team done with Ben Simmons. That's why I think they have to move on from him.
Well,
I think
especially
he's done with them. He needs a fresh
especially
start, anyways.
and especially like you said, like you're gonna lose Embiid because like Embiid and Harris are a good combo. It's like you need to bring someone else in that's not Ben Simmons. I mean, even if it's not like an all-star point guard, just like someone who can facilitate and get the ball to them, like
And then, but then if they if they draw a double team on Embiid, he can kick it out to the new guy in the corner, and he'll actually take the shot.
Right, get someone. I mean, honestly, just have Seth Curry run the point. I mean, Seth Curry can do that. He can facilitate, and then obviously, Seth Curry is going to hit threes if you leave him open. So it's just like, have Seth Curry run the point, and then if you want to bring in like another big body, I mean, you can try and bring in like a power forward, because Ben Simmons is honestly like, he plays point guard, but he should be playing, power forward. So you can bring in a power forward or maybe like a small forward and just move Seth Curry over to the point. There's a simple fix here.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like the main thing I got to say about Ben Simmons is that, like, I guess too, before I say my final point. I mean, there was a time where it seemed like there was a clash between Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, and I think that's still the case. But back when this first started happening, I mean, people debated, like, okay, well, they need to trade one of them. Do they trade Simmons or do they trade Embiid? Like, they should keep one, but which one do they get rid of? But now it's get rid of Ben Simmons. Like, nobody, like, if Joel Embiid hadn't got hurt, he probably would have won the MVP this year. Like, or if not, he would have been second to Jokic. I don't know what the voting turned out to be, but I mean, if he didn't get injured, he probably wins the MVP.
Mm-hmm.
But whereas Ben Simmons, just trash, dude. I mean, and my final thing about him is, like, it's just amazing to me that with all this money that he's making, and after winning Rookie of the Year and all this hype that's been behind him, this guy has to be the worst superstar player that I've ever watched play basketball. Like, the worst player that was considered a superstar. Like, he to me is like a seventh or eighth man coming off the bench now. Like, is as bad as he is. Like, and the way the NBA is today, like, you have to be able to shoot the ball. You have to at least be able to shoot like a corner three or something. And this man can't even do that. He can't shoot. He doesn't even shoot mid range anymore. Like, he used to at least kind of have a little bit of a decent like mid range game. He doesn't even do that anymore. All of his points are layups and dunks, and like 1 out of 5 free throws. That's it. I mean, it's just, I don't know, man. If Philly needs to get rid of him, like Zach said, he needs a fresh start. If I was a 76ers fan, I would be so done. And plus, like, I don't like quitters. I ranted on LeBron about that. Like I said, if you didn't miss that episode, I do not want any player on my team, Jags, Vols, Thunder, any of them. If they're a quitter, I don't want them on my team. I don't care how good they are. I don't care what their overall rating on Madden or 2K is. If they're a quitter, get them off my team. So that's
number one priority. Trade honestly, Bum Simmons.
Yeah. Let's call him Bum Simmons. Connor was telling me that before the chat. Joseph, let me know what you think of that. Bum Simmons. But that's the main thing I think the 76ers need to do. Like, just get rid of him. I think they have a pretty good team. Like, Seth Curry has turned up pretty big for them. Thibault is a young guy that's been growing. Embiid at least finally stayed healthy for most of the season this time. Who knows if that'll happen every year, but like, he was more reliable this year. I mean, so like
Tobias Harris.
Yeah, Tobias Harris. He's honestly one of my favorite players to watch on the team. Like, I felt like they should have tried to get him a little more involved in the game plan, but maybe if they get rid of Ben Simmons now, then he'll be the for sure like primary number 2 guy on the team behind Embiid, and like, I like him. So they've got some pretty good pieces on that team, but like, Ben Simmons is killing the chemistry. He's a quitter. Philly fans, get him out of there.
I join the bum squad with Nicholas Bum and Bismack Babumbo.
Before we transition, which we will quickly to the games ongoing, I just want to say one thing too that has to be brought up with the 76ers is Doc Rivers. He has to do better. because I think he also deserves some blame. And you can say that the blame for him is keeping Ben Simmons in the game for too long. Because I think it was the epic comeback game that the Hawks had, game 5 maybe, or
Yeah,
4.
I think that was game 5.
Yeah, one of
I
those
think it
games.
was 5.
Yeah, he kept Ben Simmons in there for so long, and they just started fouling him right away, and he of course missed them all. And after the game, he was like, "You don't know basketball if you think I should take Ben Simmons out." Like,
clearly, you don't know basketball. Then
he obviously, we talked about Ben Simmons having to be traded, but Rivers, he has to make adjustments. I mean, this has been a repeated pattern for him going back to the Clippers. When going back all the way since they had Blake Griffin and CP3, when they would give up leads, and then when the Clippers with Kawhi and Paul George, that era of Clippers, they obviously choked to the Nuggets, and now you see it with the 76ers against the Hawks. It's a pattern here. He has to make adjustments, and I honestly, his reputation as a coach is taking a hit, in my opinion. With all these good teams he's had and the lack of success, he has the title in Boston, but his reputation.
I mean, honestly, if you didn't win a title with that team, then you're really doing something wrong, because that was a true
super
big three with Garnett and Pearson, Allen,
and he had Rajon Rondo before his prime too, on that team.
Yeah, that probably was his prime actually.
Well, yeah, that's
all
true.
Honesty,
it was either before or right at the top. But he's one of the most overrated coaches too. But just one other thing, I mean, Trae Young in Game 7 was god awful. I mean, until he stepped up towards the end of the game, but at one point he was 3 of 20 shooting. I mean, this 76ers team with Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, Ben Simmons, they lost to a Hawks team basically without Trae Young the whole game, and were getting torched by Kevin Huerter and Danilo Gallinari, who's
and John Collins.
Yeah, I mean, this is I don't want to discredit the Hawks, because I mean they obviously had some amazing games in the series, but they were not good in Game 7 offensively at all. Other than literally, like I said, Huerter and Gallinari were carrying, which is not something you would expect to say for the Hawks. I mean, Bogdanovich was kind of hurt and he was ineffective. Trae Young was ineffective. Capella, other than getting his offensive putbacks for the most part, he was ineffective. Literally those two guys beat this 76ers team with Ben Simmons, Embiid, Tobias Harris, Seth Curry, and Doc Rivers as coach. The 76ers should be not that they shouldn't be embarrassed that they lost the series. Like I said, the Hawks had some great games, but they should be embarrassed that they lost that Game 7, because the Hawks were not doing well in that game.
Kind of reminds me of the Clippers losing that Game 7 to the Nuggets when Kawhi and PG disappeared.
Yeah, and I mean, I have to give credit to Trae Young though, because like I said, he was god awful for a big chunk of the game. But the biggest difference to me, he wanted it more than Ben Simmons did. I can tell you that. I'm sure Tobias was competing. I'm sure Embiid really wanted it, but Ben Simmons didn't seem to want it at all. Trae Young, you can tell he wanted to win that game, and he finally got some shots falling late in the fourth, and then that ended up being the difference in the end. Where was Ben Simmons? Oh, let me pass it to you when I'm 3 feet under the rim with nobody around me. I can't even take a layup, dude. Screw you, dude.
Yeah. All right. Enough said there, guys. Let's go and talk about the Eastern Conference Finals to start with, and that's going to be the Atlanta Hawks against the Milwaukee Bucks. Mike Budenholzer series. He was the coach for the Hawks back when they made the Eastern Conference Finals. This was kind of shocking to me, but this is only the second time Atlanta has made the Eastern Conference Finals. They won a finals back at St. Louis, but
that's okay. That's more times than the Hornets have made it. So
yeah,
dang.
But honestly, that Game 7 win was, I think, the biggest win in franchise history, really. Because we all knew that they were going to lose to the Cavs, and we expect them to lose to the Bucks. But there's at least, I think, better chance that they beat the Bucks than they had against the Cavaliers that year. But nonetheless, guys, we're all picking the Milwaukee Bucks to win the series. And the article kind of that I found to talk about this series is talking about the Hawks in their Game 7. So it says and kind of like what Eric was talking about just now, on a night Trae Young struggles, Hawks show their growth in stunning series clincher. So the things that the article kind of talked about with the Hawks is, the last time we talked about the Hawks, it was, they're ahead of schedule. They're, this is really good. This is just like, this is just gravy. They should be happy to be here, sort of a thing. But now it seems like they're starting to make a mark and show that they belong, and it's not just a fluke. Like they're a serious team to contend with. And I'll give credit to Trae Young, but also I'm going to give, secondly, credit to Nate McMillan, their head coach. He took over the team back when the team was like 500 or something. They fired their old head coach. He was then promoted within the organization, and they've just been on a tear since. They were on a tear the second half of the season. They've, been clutch in these playoff series, especially on the road. So I want to give him a lot of credit, and it really makes the people in Indiana, I think, fools for firing him. And honestly, that was a head scratching fire when they fired him, because he was like a coach of the year candidate like 2 years ago for them. And he consistently had Indiana in the playoffs, and then they fire him. And then all of a sudden Indiana misses out in the playoffs, and now the Hawks are in the Eastern Conference Finals with him as their head coach. So I want to give him a lot of credit. And then Kevin Huerter in Game 7, that was another player this article talked about, how well he stepped up. Let me go over to it, but he was the one that was stepping up. They weren't panicking. That was another thing that I think was clear to me. Like, you do kind of sense the body language with the players. And for the Sixers, it was more when the Sixers had a lead, you could tell it was more of like a feeling, let's not lose the lead. Whereas when the Hawks would have the lead, it was for them, they were just like, let's go, let's keep scoring. That's kind of the difference that I felt coaching wise in the game. Nate McMillan coached the series a lot better than Doc Rivers did. So continuing our talk about the Hawks, for Connor, who else do you give credit for on this Hawks team? Who do you give a lot of credit to?
I mean, I think it's more so I know you gave a lot of credit to Kevin Huerter. I mean, honestly, I just kind of give a lot of credit to their defense in some ways. I mean, I know obviously the defense wasn't fantastic all the time, but I mean, to go through this series and manage to, because obviously guys like Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris are going to get their points. It's not like you're going to be able to contain them completely, but like they managed to keep Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris in check. And also, I mean, honestly, in some ways, I have to commend them on the strategy that you said that they were employing. They started doing the hack a Ben, like the old hack a Shaq back in the day, for thinking of that. Most teams, it's kind of like a thing that you don't really do. But hey, it's the playoffs. You do whatever you can. And when Ben Simmons is out here shooting 34% from the free throw line, then, why not? Because chances are he's probably going to miss both of those free throws. Yeah. And it just ends up being a wasted possession for the 76ers, and especially if you have fouls to give. So, yeah, I think, like you said, pretty well most of the credit has to go to the coaching in this series. Obviously Trae Young stepped up when he had to, but I'm going to give my credit to the defense in this, and it's funny because oddly enough, I'll talk about defense, when we get to the Bucks too, but the defense of the Hawks, man, if they can keep up what they've been doing, who knows if they can maybe transition over and they can start, if they're able to contain Giannis, if you contain Giannis, you beat the Bucks. So, it's just a matter of, can they do it? They managed to contain Embiid. Can they contain Giannis?
So I'll ask Eric, speaking about Danilo Gallinari, because he was a former Thunder player. Did you see this performance from him in the series? Like, because you watched him with the Thunder, has he played better to you than expected, or is he playing as well as you thought he would play?
He did a little bit better than what I was expecting. Because with Atlanta, he comes off the bench, whereas when he was in OKC that season, he was a starter. So his role is a little bit different, and he wasn't really super involved. But I think when Bogdanovich was having the knee issues and stuff, it caused him to play a lot more. And so in game 7, especially, like he stepped up big time, and he was in a situation where he could have really let his confidence get rattled, because when he first came into that game 7, he missed his first like 2 or 3 shots, I think, and like pretty badly too. I mean, I was kind of wondering if he should even be in the game. And he had a turnover too pretty early on, and I was like, dang, it sucks. Like, I like this guy, but I'm like, man, he's hurting them more than he's helping them right now. But he stuck with it and like hit a couple threes and got it going, and ended up playing really well. He had some big contested rebounds toward the end. Like normally, like I've talked about, not big on rebounds normally, but he had some rebounds where he was going up with Sixers players and coming down with them and grabbing them, which is what I consider more valuable. He forced a couple turnovers. I mean,
he had the game series, or the game ending turnover, when you remember he like stripped the ball from, I forget who it was, but it led down for a fast break for him, and that ended the game.
Yeah, and he got that dunk at the end. Yeah, I mean, he was so big in that game 7, and that's the thing about the Hawks. I mean, obviously Trae Young, you're generally going to be able to count on a night in and night out basis, but the thing is, they've got so many. They don't have any other like great elite players, but it's kind of like the Heat team of last year. There's always that one person that, as long as at least 1 or 2 of them step up, like they're really tough to beat. Now, if they're all struggling, then they're going to lose. But like in this game, it was Herter and Gallinari that stepped up big. And another game, it might be Bogdanovich and Capella that get some stuff going, or John Collins might go off one night. I mean, you never know. So, but in this game, in game 7, Gallinari was the second biggest one besides Herter that made the difference. And as a Thunder fan who likes Gallinari, I was happy to see that. So,
yeah,
definitely good for him.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, guys, let's go and talk about the Western Conference Finals matchup here. And it's, of course, the Clippers at the Suns. And we've already seen game 1. The Suns took game 1 in Phoenix, and they are up 1-0 in the series. Not surprising. The Clippers probably will lose game 2 again, like they have every time in the playoffs. It seems to be okay for them. They go down 0-2, and it's no big deal. But the article here that I kind of, and by the way, we're all picking the Suns in this too. So, Eric, yeah, I know you are not picking the Clippers because Kawhi's injury, but this is the first time so far you have gone away from the Clippers. So we'll see if that makes a difference. But the article here is how Devin Booker dissected the Clippers defense in Suns game 1 win. So obviously he had his first ever triple double. I know that's Eric's favorite thing, but he stepped up and played big. But Eric, give us what you saw in game 1 and what kind of adjustments you think the Clippers need to make on the Suns, and what the Suns did really well to win.
Yeah, well, what the Suns did really well, and the thing that impressed me the most in that game was how Devin Booker played more of a facilitator role in that game, in addition to his scoring, because with CP3 out, instead of keeping him at the 2 guard and then starting like Cameron Payne or something as the primary ball handler, like Devin Booker was the primary ball handler a lot of the time. That's what led to him getting the triple double. That he don't really, that's like I said, his first one. Usually it's players that are primary ball handlers that get the triple doubles, and normally he doesn't do that, which is why he doesn't get them. But he did a very good job, which surprised me. I was worried for the Suns' sake that they might lose a game early in the series because of Chris Paul not being there. Because with as great as Devin Booker is, like, Chris Paul really is the leader on that team. And we saw it like in the Lakers series when Chris Paul got hurt in the first game, how the Suns kind of struggled when he was not out there. So I was kind of worried about that. But Devin Booker stepped up big in this game, and he was the biggest difference for the Suns. And it was a really back and forth game for the most part, but the Suns managed to, pull away with it at the end. Now, there were some adjustments, though, that the Clippers made towards the end of the game that do make me think they still have a chance, and I'm sure they're going to continue to do this. They just, towards the end of the game, they just started double teaming Devin Booker like every time. And so while that, could lead to somebody getting an open shot, it makes it harder for him to make the pass. And it also makes it more of a guarantee that he's not going to be taking the shot. So if the Clippers do that and it works, then that could be a difference. Because my thing with beating pretty much any team that I talk about a lot when we analyze these series and what we think will happen, you've got to take away the other team's best player and make someone else on the team beat you, especially when there's like one superstar and then the rest are, role players or maybe slightly above average guys type of deal.
I mean,
like,
Aiton's like a borderline all-star, but he's not a superstar.
Yeah, he's borderline, but he's another one though where he mainly gets his points off of like layups and dunks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But in terms of like make another shooter besides Devin Booker make Cameron Payne beat you, or Cameron Johnson, or
Jay Crowder,
or Bridges. Yeah, make somebody like that beat you. Like don't let Devin Booker torch you like that. Double team him, try to take him out of the game as much as possible, and make someone else beat you. And then if the other guys start getting hot, then you'll have to abandon that strategy. But that's always my biggest thing. Like, take away the superstar and make someone else beat you. So if the Clippers can do that, they have a chance. But they did manage to beat the Jazz without Kawhi. But I don't think they can beat the Suns without him, especially since CP3 should be coming back pretty soon. I just don't see the Clippers being able to win it. I don't know if y'all feel differently. I don't know if you think that adjustment's good, or if there's a different adjustment you'd make if you're the Clippers. What do you guys think?
All right, I'll say this, and it's something I've noticed with the Clippers. I don't know if I didn't really study it a lot in this game, but in the other series that they've played in, when they've had superstars like Luka and Donovan Mitchell, they've always gone off in the playoffs so far. Like every game, basically, Donovan Mitchell and Luka Doncic were incredible. I think the best way you stop that is the problem with the Clippers, I think, is honestly like an ego problem. They have a belief that their defense is so good that they can switch every player 1-5, basically, and Patrick Beverley will guard anybody. Like, here's what they need to do. Like, Paul George, he's, supposed to be their best defender. And I think he is. So just don't switch. Like, every time teams will set screens, they switch. It's just the smallest little thing. They go up for a screen and they switch defenders. They got to fight through these screens and contest the shots and keep their best defenders on the other team's best players. That, to me, is the big adjustment that I think they should have been making a long time ago. And it was better when they had Kawhi, but they don't have him anymore, obviously, so they have to go with Paul George as that. But that's the defensive adjustment I think they really need to make. I'm not sure if they need to do better on offense or not, but Connor, I'll ask you that same question.
I mean, honestly, you probably hit the nail on the head for that, for not just the Clippers, but for a lot of teams, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk about how in the Nets-Bucks series, how, like, Harden would be coming up the floor, and then, like, Jeff Green would, like, set a screen for him, and then, like, Holiday wouldn't try to fight through the screen at all. So now you have, like, Giannis guarding Harden and, like, Holiday on Green. It's like, okay, like, Holiday's a really good defender. I'm sure you can fight through a screen, like, because you don't want Giannis guarding Harden, but, Anyway, yeah, I think that would be, for sure, that's good. And also, I mean, you guys mostly hit on all the topics. It's just really, honestly, I think more than any other series, because, obviously the Clippers, like you said, they've gone down 0-2 in both of their series, and, they managed to come back. But really in this series, this game 2 is like, I don't think they can afford to drop it, because like how Eric was saying, CP3 is supposed to be coming back soon. Like, and once CP3 comes back, if they're down 0-2, I honestly wouldn't see any way for the Clippers to come back at that point. Because, obviously Kawhi, like if they had Kawhi, then I would say, yeah, okay, they still have a chance. But without Kawhi, if they're down 0-2 when Chris Paul comes back, then it's over. Like, I honestly, I mean, I guess I probably won't lock it or anything, but I'd say the series is over at that point. So they really need to step up. Paul George has played well. We called him out too on the last podcast, and he's been playing pretty well. So, as long as Pandemic P doesn't come back, then the Clippers should stand a good chance at winning Game 2, as long as like Eric said, you contain Devin Booker, make the rest of the guys beat you. So it's just gotta win. If you don't, it's over, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. They can't escape death that many times. It's the Suns are a different beast, and I think a lot of people think they're gonna win the series. Let's move on now, guys, and wrap this episode up by talking about the NBA draft lottery. So on the night that this podcast is coming out is the same night as the draft lottery. And if you're a Houston Rocket, Orlando Magic, Oklahoma City Thunder fan, you are going to want to watch
Detroit
this.
Piston.
Yeah, Detroit's up there too, but especially with those teams because there's a lot on the line. You've got draft picks that could be traded. So I just kind of want to split this up into two different things and talk about the teams that need the first overall pick the most. So the way that the NBA draft lottery works, it's very complicated, and there's a lot of numbers if you're watching on YouTube, I'm not going to explain all the numbers, but to get the first pick, it's a lottery system randomly decided, and the 3 worst teams have the 3 equal best odds to get the first overall pick at 14%. So in this year's case, that's the Houston Rockets, Detroit Pistons, and Orlando Magic. So, Eric, between those 3 teams, 3 pretty bad teams this year, it's a tough decision here, but which of those teams do you think, in your opinion, needs that first overall pick the most?
Yeah, like you said, this is definitely not a easy selection to make here because obviously they all could use it. That's why it's not like a case last year where like Golden State had made a trade and then they ended up getting the number 2 pick, but they didn't necessarily need that number 2 pick, compared to some other teams. But this year, all 3 of the top teams, I mean, they definitely need it. But I'm going to go with Detroit is needing it the most just because Orlando has a pretty good chance of getting another high pick. And then Houston actually does have a couple pieces that I like on that team. I mean, it's not, great or anything, but, they at least have a couple of decent pieces on that team. But Detroit, to me, just doesn't have anything. I mean, they need this fresh start as much as possible. They already didn't really have anybody. And then like Reggie Jackson's now gone and Blake Griffin's now gone. I mean, they don't have anything, dude. I think they need it the most. Not by a lot, but I think it should be them. What about you guys?
I mean, this may be a little cliche, but I guess I do have to go with the team that had the worst record, the Houston Rockets. I mean, it was just crazy to see just how bad they were. I mean, even, just games where they would play a game against like OKC even, or like against Cleveland, and they would just get completely blown out. It's like, okay, I know maybe there might be some element of like trying to tank here and whatnot, but still, like, you can't be getting blown out by these teams that are, only have like 5 more wins than you or something. So, and also I think what's interesting for the Rockets, because obviously, they have a really high chance to be somewhere in the top 4. But if by that, really, smaller chance that they don't have a top 4 pick, they're not even going to have a first round pick.
That's 48% chance by the odds.
Right,
it's
but that's still 52% that you're going to get a top 4 pick. So, but anyway, like basically a 50-50 chance that the Rockets, the team with the worst record in the NBA, might not even end up with a first round pick. And
they have picks that aren't in the lottery, so they've got like Portland's pick and another team. I think the Heat.
Right.
So they have other first round
but
picks,
like obviously not as
they won't be in the lottery though.
No.
Right.
They're out.
So which is like what they really need. So and that pick will be going to OKC if that happens. So which I know Eric will be happy about. But it's just I think they need it the most for sure, especially, like I said, given the fact that they could end up falling out of the lottery. It's really important for them.
So obviously, guys, I'm a Magic fan. I could be biased and say the Magic need the first pick the most. And honestly, I think the Magic, when they've had first overall picks, I remember Shaq, Dwight Howard, they usually end up being pretty good players. So I'm really excited for the lottery. Like, I want to see them get the first overall pick and then draft Jalen Suggs. But obviously, there's a chance, Cade Cunningham could go first and then they could get him second or third. But I'm going to agree with Eric on this with Detroit, because who did Detroit even have? Like, they have Jeremy Grant, I think, right? From the Nuggets. That was like their big signing in free agency. Killian Hayes, I think, was a rookie for him last year.
Sadiq Bey was a rookie.
Sadiq Bey. They have some good
North Carolina guy, Wayne Ellington. Woo!
quote marks on good young players on their team, but they need the first pick. I think a superstar, and especially too, like, Detroit is such a hard place to get players to go to. It's you have to pay like a Detroit tax to get players to sign there, pay them more money to go there. So whereas like Houston, they can recruit good players, and plus Houston before this season had a great success with their team. They were in the playoffs a lot. Orlando, they've been better than Detroit has, so I'll go with Detroit. They need to win the most, I think, out of these top three. So now let's get to another interesting part of the lottery. So I'll ask Eric this question first. Eric, between the non-top three teams in the draft lottery, I won't go ahead and say all of them. That'd take too long. But between those teams, which of those teams, in your opinion, needs the number one pick the most if they were to get lucky, and win the draft lottery with lower odds?
Yeah, it's a toss-up for me. I mean, like you had with the Magic. I mean, I'm a Thunder fan, and I could say them, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to pick the Thunder because we have like a million other draft picks. So while obviously it would be nice to happen, it's not as big of a need for us as some of these other teams. But ironically enough, I mean, even though they had the number one pick last year, I mean, I'm going to go with Minnesota because I think there's a pretty good chance that if not this season, like probably by next season, they're going to move on from Karl Anthony Towns. I'm sure he's probably ready to get out of there. And once that happens, like, they don't have much to work with on this team. And I'm not even a big fan of Karl Anthony Towns anyway, but he is still by far the best player on their team. And
he gets you the three-pointer.
Yeah, he gets you the three-pointer, guys. So he does that pretty well. But, yeah. So I'm going to go with them. I mean, my second choice would probably be Cleveland. Like, they've got some, like, good guards and stuff, but kind of like I talked about with Karl Anthony Towns, like, I know Kevin Love wants to get out of there really badly. Like, he hates it there. Like, I've seen clips of him in games where he's, like, given up on the team and, like...
Oh, yeah. Talk about giving up, man. You should see some of his clips.
Yeah. And, even though he was perfectly fine with signing there, with LeBron and everything and getting that 5-year, like, max or super max or whatever it was, like, but now that LeBron's not there, like, well, you signed the 5-year contract, bro. You knew LeBron wasn't going to stay that whole time. But I could rant on. I mean, I hate quitters, bro. I hate quitters. But so it would be a toss up between one of them. But I'm assuming they get rid of Karl Anthony Towns. I'm going to go Minnesota, and if they keep him, then Cleveland.
All right, and Connor, I'll let you go next on the same question.
Well, unfortunately, Eric kind of stole mine. I think I was going to say the Cavaliers, but I guess if I have to be different from Eric, since he said the Timberwolves and the Cavaliers.
Well, you don't have to be different.
You can go with Cleveland.
Okay, I mean, I would probably go with Cleveland. Minnesota. I mean, I don't know. It's just like, how often are they going to get the number one pick to where, like, if something's not going to work out? I don't know. I feel like they still have a slight potential to maybe do something if they can get these players developed. Like Anthony Edwards, he showed, some flashes of brilliance last year. Obviously, even though he was the number one overall pick, he wasn't the, rookie of the year. That went to LaMelo Ball. But, I think, also they do still have D'Angelo Russell right now. They do, for the time being, they have Karl Anthony Towns. So who knows? Like, there's some pieces there that could maybe be put together. Whereas the Cavaliers, they really, from what I've seen, all they really have is Colin Sexton. Darius Garland hasn't turned out to be what they hoped he was going to be. So, and also I think Cleveland's another place kind of like what, Minnesota's kind of like this too, but also like how Eric said, with Detroit, like it's hard to get people to come to Cleveland. Cleveland's not exactly a, bright destination. It's not like LeBron's still there, attracting people there. So, I think Cleveland could definitely really benefit from this and just get, I don't know what they're going to get from it, but just get something.
Yeah, they've got 11.5% chance. Same with Oklahoma City. I'm glad both of you guys mentioned those two teams, and that wasn't the one that I was going to pick. I'm going to take the Sacramento Kings. They're a little bit farther down the list here at just 4.5% because they had a better season than the teams that Eric and Connor talked about. But here's the thing with the Kings is I've always thought that they had, somewhat of a good team because especially coming into next year with Fox and Halliburton, who they drafted this year. I think they have some
Buddy
pieces.
Hield.
Yeah, they have pieces, but they don't have a superstar. They don't have like a number one overall pick, and they haven't had that in so long. I mean, they have the streak in the NBA for missing the playoffs. Like they have going back to I think like 2003 or something like that. They haven't made the playoffs. And in a league where more than half the teams make the playoffs, that's really bad. So the Kings, it hurts them that they play in the West. They play in that division with the Warriors, with the Suns now, with the Clippers, with the Lakers. I mean, that's just a brutal division. And then the West in general with all the other superstars that are in the West. We just always forget about Sacramento, and
there's a reason why a lot of these teams are East teams on here.
Yeah. So we just forget about Sacramento, and they haven't had the number one pick like some of these other teams. Cleveland and Minnesota, they've had the number one picks recently. If somehow one of these teams ends up with the number one pick and it's Sacramento, I'll be like, good for you, Sacramento. You've sucked for so long, you can use this. So that's my thing about Sacramento.
No matter what anyone says, the Charlotte Hornets deserve the number one pick and need to get the number one pick.
Rigged, 1.8%.
Oh man.
Yeah, no, if Golden State at 0.5% wins,
jeez.
There's going to be a riot.
I mean, that really is the definition of the team on here that doesn't need it is Golden State.
Golden State better get pick 14. That better be what they're picking.
Yep. All right, guys. Thank you if you tuned in and listened to Eric rant, me talk about the Kings needing a win and the playoffs that are still going on. So hopefully you enjoyed this episode. And we'll be back next week with another one. Until then, remember, be clutch.
Bye.
Please.